Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to this week's Equinety Podcast. We are swinging out into Arkansas. We've got Warren Bauer on the call this week. Warren, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, it's always a pleasure, and I'm excited about this one this week. You're a fairly new horse owner, and I guess we'll go back a couple years. And so I thought this would be really beneficial to other folks that are, fairly new horse owners and maybe some of the trials and tribulations that come along with that. Specifically, we're going to be talking about on this podcast is laminitis and how this product, our Equinety product, really helped get your horse through that, as well as some abscess issues, also the mane and coat improvement. So before we get into that, give us a little bit of backstory of how you acquired your horse. It was your daughter's horse initially, or I guess it still is, but that's why you ended up getting it. But tell us a little bit about the backstory and let's start there.
Absolutely. And I think like any teenage girl, my daughter was drawn to the horse community and horses, and she loves all animals, but it was pretty obvious that horses were particularly special to her. We started off with lessons, and she loved going to lessons, loved being around horses. And I kind of found that so did I. And so we started off by taking her to weekly lessons. And then unfortunately our trainer had to go to college. So we kind of fell off for a while. And just by happenstance, we happened to find somebody that lived close to us that was offering lessons. It was the dead of winter. It was really cold, but he was willing to take us on. And so that kind of led us down the path to where we are today. But it just started off with us taking some lessons, falling in love with the horse lifestyle. And then one day he asked me, when do you think you're going to get your own horse? And, I thought that was completely out of reach. I said, well, I don't have a horse property and I can't afford the board. And so we worked it out where I could basically get a horse, keep it at his property, and he would only charge me for food, a couple $100 a month, which I could afford. And so we went out looking for horses. And so it had to be the right horse. My daughter was relatively new and was a beginner. And so we finally found the right horse, had the right temperament. And so we made it happen 2 days before Christmas. It was a great Christmas surprise for my daughter, very emotional when she went out and saw that she was getting her own horse. And so that was really sort of the beginning. It was something I never thought would happen, but due to the generosity of my trainer, basically saying, "Hey, you could keep your horse here for a very modest sum." That's what kind of got us started.
That's awesome. And then ultimately, this led you to actually relocating to a different state, and because of the lifestyle. And now, how many horses do you have?
Yeah, well, right now we have 4 horses and a donkey. Start off with one, and then, of course, you have to have a companion to that horse.
You can't just have
and
one.
Then, that's right. And then, it's got to the point where my trainer's calling me up now saying, "Hey, it's been a month or two since you've gotten a new horse. What's going on with you?" So we've taken the horse lifestyle.
Yeah,
that
that's great. Yeah, once you're in, it's kind of hard to get out, isn't it?
Addicting for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So this main horse, tell everybody the horse's name?
Her name is Ladybug.
Ladybug. All right. So how long had you had Ladybug before you started noticing some issues going on?
Well, in May of 2020, she started limping. And so, at first it was a sort of a slight limp, but then we noticed that it was pronounced and it wouldn't go away. It was worse in the morning when it was cool. And so I'd come out to feed him. All the other horses would come running over, and it was kind of sad. Ladybug would either stand there and not move, or she would make her way over, and then you can notice, definitely a limp. She had something going on. Being relatively new horse owners, we didn't know what to default to, and so now we would know, okay, it's probably an abscess, but back then we didn't. We just knew that she was looking lame, so we called the vet out, and they did diagnose it as an abscess. Although it didn't show as an abscess. They said it's likely an abscess. They didn't take any scans, but they said they gave us a treatment plan and then said if it doesn't get any better to call them back. So the first couple times it happened, the bute, worked and the abscess burst, and so it seemed to have gone away, but it just kept repeating itself. And so in August of this year, things took a turn for the worse, because not only was she limping, but she could barely walk. And so I have a video that it's really actually even difficult to watch because of the way that she was attempting to walk, and she was throwing her head, and she was sort of putting her hoof out in front of her in this circular motion. And it was one step at a time, and it just looked incredibly painful. And so we had already been to the vet, and they said, "Oh, it's probably an abscess." And I showed the video to some friends of mine, and they said, "No, you need to, number one, find a horse specialist, and then number two, get her looked at as soon as you can." And we did, and ultimately it led to a laminitis diagnosis.
Mm. Yeah, that is horrific when you're going through that, especially trying to figure out what it is, pinpoint the problem for sure.
Exactly.
So what were the next steps that you took?
Well, really what he did is he was very matter of fact, as most, vets tend to be. And so she's definitely got laminitis. So we need, barn rest. She needs to go on a diet, lose some weight. And he prescribed a good farrier with corrective shoeing. And then basically said, just watch and see how she does. But, that really sort of wasn't good enough for us. So I decided to study up on laminitis as much as I can. And really what it was is she's a thick horse to begin with. And we clearly overfed her to the point where, she was overweight. So, I think that's what caused the situation. But I said, okay, so we, as a horse owner and somebody who loves this horse, what can I do on my end? That's when I started researching products, and, the doctor gave some good advice, but didn't say anything in addition that I could do. So I started going out and doing research and finding out what I could do on my end to help my horse, try to get through this as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you came across the Equinety product?
I did. I saw an ad on Facebook, and the ad featured before and after scans and of a horse that had laminitis. And so I said, I want that situation. I want to be able to look at my scans in a couple months and see a dramatic improvement like that. So I reached out to her, kind of said, hey, this is what I got going on. And, I was just seeking information at that point. I was hungry to find anything I could about laminitis, so I could find out, number one, what I could do differently in the future. Number two, what I can do right now to, help treat my horse. So I found your product that way, reached out, started a Facebook friendship with your rep, and had, a lot of good information, but most importantly, got your product, and I started using it immediately.
Yeah. Now, how quickly did you begin seeing results with it?
Well, I don't want to sound dramatic, but it seemed to me like it was almost immediate. And so in terms of laminitis, that took some time, but in terms of the, her appearance, her coat seemed to respond immediately. She's got, she's never had problems with her coat, but now, people look at her and that's the first thing they comment on is her thick, shiny, beautiful coat. Her mane, I have some before and after pictures, going back to last year and now. And there's a dramatic improvement just in the mane by itself and also with the coat. So we basically had her on barn rest. And so we were using your product and we put her on a diet, and it was a waiting game from, August of 2020 until basically November when we were back for our first checkup. We didn't know, is what we're doing being effective? Is it, having an impact on laminitis? And we went back in November. The vet took a look at the scan and was very, very pleased. The hoof growth was dramatic. He had a very positive diagnosis at that point. Basically said, hey, she's one of the lucky ones. So he said, they don't often respond to treatment like this. And, it could have gone either way, but it's looking like she's going to pull through it and she's going to do really well. And then we also had, an update last week, took her back in for some follow-up scans. The hoof growth is continuing and everything is on track. And we even okayed her to start light riding again. So
that's great. Now, did you also notice sole depth along in those scans?
Yep, absolutely. We have growth, we have depth. Everything the vet could not have been any more pleased.
Yeah, that's great. Now, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, maybe, you're going through similar situation or just a situation in general, you're doing your research, you came across our Equinety product. And in this case, we're specifically talking about the Equinety Horse Excel. We've been on the market now for going on 7 years. What this is, it's 100% pure amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. And what makes it really unique is it doesn't fit into a category of a hoof supplement or a coat and mane supplement or a calmer or a muscle builder or a joint supplement. It doesn't fit into any of those categories. However, what it's doing specifically, the amino acids are combined to stimulate the pituitary gland, and that's the gland in the body that releases hormones which are specific for repair. And so when we can get the body to release its own hormones, it's the body that sends those hormones to the problem areas, which is why in this example alone, you notice, rather quickly the healthier, shinier, softer, fuller coat, and then the mane growth. But then within 3 months in those scans, you also noticed thicker soles and all around healthier hoof growth. And now you're going into month 4 to 5, which has been 5 months now. You're already back in some light work and training that way, exercise, which is pretty remarkable. We've got other podcasts where we're talking severe situations. And I tell people all the time, this is not a miracle supplement. However, we've seen some pretty miraculous things. And we always, of course, recommend, working closely with a good farrier and a good vet. And specifically when we're talking about hoof issues, again, I tell people all the time, you could have the best farrier on the planet and, a horse standing in front of them, but if there's nothing to work with, there's not much the farrier can do. And so one of the great things with this product and dealing specifically with hoof issues, it really helps to get that hoof growth. And so it ultimately gives your farrier more to work with in a shorter amount of time. So it kind of helps everything, just speeds up the process there. So going into 5 months now, so you're back into light training. How's the overall demeanor and just everything with the horse? And I'm sure your daughter is very, very happy again.
My daughter's absolutely thrilled. And so, it's when you take a horse that, is used to, roaming on 5 acres and, you put her in a barn and a small corral for a number of months, she was, very anxious to get out. So I think that she's thrilled now that she's able to join the herd and not be, caged up in a small corral all day. My daughter's thrilled because, she gets to ride and do things that she couldn't do before. And, but most importantly, we're all thrilled that it appears that, she's on the road to recovery. It's only been, since August. So the vet is not willing to say that, she's completely healed yet. There is some things that we still need to do. She's still shoed, but basically the trajectory is where we want it to be. And, it's only going to get better from here. So we as a family are absolutely thrilled.
That is fantastic. Well, I tell you, we as a company, we're definitely blessed to have a product that helps in so many ways. And it's one of the reasons why we started this podcast is to help get these stories out there so it can maybe give some other folks some hope that if they're going through a similar situation. And we'd love to see those before and after pictures and videos. Maybe we can post those along with our with this podcast, which you can be found on teamequinety.com. And we have a whole podcast section. And this podcast will be transcribed, so maybe we can post those below there. But I tell you what, Warren, if there's anybody tuning in, maybe they're still a little bit on the fence about this, like, well, maybe this sounds a little too good to be true. Is there anything that you could offer to tell these folks to maybe get off the fence and give it a try?
Yeah, so I think that, I was kind of the ideal test case for potentially products that promise but under deliver, right? So, snake oil supplements that take this and the laminitis will go away. So I was right for that because I was desperate. So I was a desperate horse owner. You touched on it earlier. If somebody else is possibly going through this, I think that's a good word. I was desperate. I was going to try anything I could to help my horse. But you touched on it earlier. It's really science-based, right? They're amino acids. It's not some proprietary, supplement where you can't mention what the ingredients are. And, there's no science behind it. This is, they're amino acids, which has an effect on the body that helps reduce inflammation, which helps the body to heal. And so that in and of itself is one of the reasons that I chose the product is it wasn't making, outlandish promises, that were not rooted in common sense and science. So
sure,
that's kind of what drew me to the product. And but I can, definitely say that based on what I've seen and where I was and where I am now, that the results have been dramatic. And I'm not a veterinarian, but my veterinarian has basically said the results are dramatic. So
yeah.
I can see the difference in just how she was walking and how she seems to be happier and healthier. So I can see that. But then when a veterinarian tells you that, basically what has happened in a very short period of time is somewhat remarkable, and she's one of the lucky ones, then that's all the validation that I need. So I think that we're on the right path.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, especially, when you're not in the medical field, well, even as a new horse owner, and you don't understand a lot of the stuff, which is, if you don't have that background, then you don't have the background and you don't know what you don't know. However, there are things that you can pick up on, as you mentioned, the horses, they're healthier, they're happier, just the visual components of a healthier, shinier coat, something's going on. And then being able to see the scans, which, most people can't read scans. And if you're not trained to read scans, then how would you know? However, when you can put two of them side by side that are 3 months apart and notice dramatic differences, that's all you really need to see. You don't have to know much more than that, as being able to physically see the difference. So, and then I'll add this in there too, is one of the great things about this Equinety Horse Excel, because it's already in the amino acid stage, it's ready for absorption. And all that means is that it starts working in 24 hours. And you had mentioned earlier that, you notice dramatic results very quickly. And I would say that 90 plus percentile of people notice changes in 30 days or less. So it works really, really fast. It's 100% safe to give with any other medications or supplements. And we always recommend not to change anything, just add this to it. And then over the next couple weeks to 30 days, you know your horse better than anyone. So you can determine whether to reduce or stop using other things, but it makes it really easy. The serving size is like a teaspoon, regardless of the size of the horse. So it's about as simple as you can get when it comes to a supplement and how quickly it works. So that's pretty awesome.
And I can say that when we first got the product and I saw you mentioned the serving size, and it's hard to believe that something that small can have, a beneficial effect on an animal that large. But yet it did. So yeah. It doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't. Awesome. Well, Warren Bauer out of Arkansas, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story here on the Equinety Podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm really, really glad that I found you guys.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.